I mean, I want you to imagine something. Picture yourself standing dead center in the middle of the high Nevada desert.
Okay, that is an intense visual right out of the gate.
Right. It is pitch black. It is midnight. There is zero ambient city light, just a sky that is practically suffocated by stars. And in your hand, you are holding a microphone.
Oh, wow.
Now imagine you are broadcasting the absolute weirdest, most unexplainable, reality-bending ideas directly into that dark void, all while knowing that millions of people sitting in their own dark rooms are hanging on your every single word.
Which is, a profound paradox when you really think about it. You are in a state of complete physical isolation.
Yeah, completely alone.
But you are simultaneously functioning as the central node for this massive, unseen collective of wandering minds. It's like the desert acts as a kind of amplifier for the unknown.
Exactly. And that dynamic, that is the heartbeat of what we are exploring today. We are jumping into a really fascinating piece of media history. We've got this unedited raw video interview from 2013, straight from the YouTube channel Mystery Wire.
It is such a great piece of tape.
It really is. It features the legendary broadcaster Art Bell.
Hmm.
And the timing of this tape is just crucial, because you are watching him right on the precipice of his highly anticipated return to radio after a really long hiatus.
It serves as a perfect time capsule, doesn't it?
Yeah.
We are catching a true pioneer of the medium right before he steps back into the arena that he essentially built from the ground up. It gives us a window into how he reflects on his own creation.
Right, and more importantly, how the cultural appetite for the unexplained had just mutated in his absence.
Total.
Okay, let's unpack this, because our mission today isn't just, a nostalgia trip through old school radio. We are looking at the evolution of paranormal broadcasting.
Right, the actual mechanics of it.
Exactly. How fringe ideas bleed into the mainstream, and what happens when you hand total, unchecked creative freedom to someone who is unapologetically obsessed with the unknown.
And to really grasp this 2013 interview, we have to look at the cultural earthquake that occurred between his early days and his return. The landscape had fundamentally shifted.
It was a completely different world, and Bell was acutely aware of it. He actually notes in the interview that the world he helped create had multiplied times 10.
Which is a staggering metric.
Times 10 is a massive leap. And he wasn't just talking about ratings there. He was talking about societal engagement. He points out that the core burning questions haven't actually changed. People are still asking about life after death.
They are still asking about ghosts.
Right, and UFOs. But the sheer volume of the appetite for those questions had just become gargantuan.
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, we really have to examine why those specific unanswerable questions endure. Concepts like life after death or, the existence of other intelligence.
Yeah, they aren't just spooky campfire tales.
Exactly, they are not. They represent the absolute frontiers of human knowledge. What Bell observed is that as we age, both as individuals and as a collective society, we don't necessarily grow out of wondering about these things.
No, we don't.
The distractions of daily survival might mask them, sure, but that existential curiosity actually deepens.
And he points to Hollywood as the ultimate barometer for this, which I found super interesting. He quotes that famous line from the movie Contact.
Oh, right. Want to take a ride?
Yes, want to take a ride. He observes that practically every fourth movie coming out around that time was some variation of alien spacecraft contact or an interstellar mystery. It permeated absolutely everything.
It was inescapable.
And what is really compelling is how he frames this shift. Things that were completely laughable, the kind of fringe topics that would ruin a broadcaster's credibility 10 years prior, well, they'd become entirely respectable.
Yeah, he uses a really fascinating structural example to map how an idea migrates from the fringe to the center of public discourse. He brings up global warming.
Which is a great way to look at the mechanics of information flow. Regardless of the ongoing debates about the specific mechanisms or, who is responsible, Bell points out that the basic premise had become a mainstream baseline.
Right. It moved from an obscure scientific warning on the outer edges of the conversation directly into the middle of the public square.
Exactly. And he uses that trajectory to explain his own programming strategy. Because that shift constantly happens, a broadcaster operating in the unknown can't just camp out on one single topic forever.
No, because once an idea becomes mainstream, the host has to jump forward again, back out to the new fringe. And you can see his intuitive grasp of this in his relationship with the physicist Michio Kaku.
Oh man, that detail really stands out in the tape.
Yeah.
He talks about booking Michio Kaku when Kaku was practically an unknown to the general public. He was just this brilliant guy with incredibly complex theories about theoretical physics.
Right. String theory and all that.
Yeah, and Bell gave him a massive platform and predicted, like right to his face, that he would be the next Carl Sagan, and Kaku just chuckled at him.
Yet the prediction was flawlessly accurate. By 2013, Kaku is a ubiquitous pop culture intellectual. I mean, he's on morning news shows, he's hosting mainstream science documentaries.
He is everywhere.
Bell didn't just spot a smart academic. He spotted society's underlying unarticulated hunger to understand theoretical physics long before traditional television executives realized it could be profitable.
That makes me think of the early days of the internet. Getting online used to be this highly technical, super niche hobby. You had people on message boards late at night talking in code.
Great, society largely viewed it as this strange, nerdy subculture.
Exactly. Fast forward, and that weird fringe hobby is the foundation of modern civilization. But looking at how fast the fringe becomes the center, I do wonder about the longevity of the mystery.
What do you mean?
Well, if the unknown eventually gets sanitized and commercialized for mass consumption, I mean, when you can just go to a multiplex and see aliens rendered in hundreds of millions of dollars of CGI, does the paranormal lose its edge? When everything is a Hollywood blockbuster, is it still a genuine mystery?
That tension is exactly why the medium has to evolve. When the unknown is heavily commercialized, it inevitably starts to feel synthetic. The rough edges get sanded down.
Yeah, the actual elements of fear and genuine wonder.
Exactly. They get smoothed over for a mass audience. Which means when the subject matter becomes mainstream, the only way to explore it freshly is to completely destroy the traditional structures of how you present it.
So here's where it gets really interesting. Destroying the structure is precisely what Bell was mapping out in this interview.
The new project.
Yes. He spends a lot of time discussing his new project launching in mid-September of 2013. It's a show called Dark Matter on SiriusXM, and the entire premise of this venture is ultimate, unshackled freedom.
To appreciate how radical this experiment was, you really have to understand the mathematical cage of traditional terrestrial radio.
It is incredibly rigid.
AM and FM broadcasting is timed down to the absolute second. You have hard breaks, mandatory network news at the top of the hour, strict commercial blocks.
Yep.
If you are having a profound, emotionally raw conversation with a caller about a near-death experience, and the clock strikes 14 minutes past the hour, you are legally obligated to cut them off to sell car insurance.
Which kills the magic instantly.
Mhm.
But SiriusXM offered him the exact opposite, a totally blank canvas. Bell says their instruction to him, literally the only mandate from the executives, was just have fun.
Which is unheard of.
Completely. No subscriber quotas to hit, no ratings pressure to manage. It's like replacing a heavily mapped out theme park ride with a compass in an open desert.
It was the application of the premium cable television model to audio. They were relying on the inherent draw of pure, unfiltered content to bring in the audience organically.
Instead of engineering the content to artificially trap a listener through cliffhangers and, scheduled programming blocks, the flexibility is almost hard to comprehend in today's hyper-optimized media landscape.
Right.
He tells them, "What do I do if I just need a natural break?" And they simply respond, "Play a record. Just put on a song whenever it feels right."
That is wild.
He could broadcast for 3 hours. If he was deep in a fascinating topic, he could stretch it to 4. If the night demanded it, 5 hours. There was no grid.
But what is really revealing is that within that infinite corporate-sanctioned freedom, he actively chooses to build his own internal boundaries.
Yes, the swearing.
Exactly. He makes a distinct point of saying that despite being allowed to broadcast absolutely anything, he refuses to swear. He fundamentally believes that bad language isn't a requirement to effectively entertain or inform an audience.
It shows that freedom isn't just about chaos. It's about intentionality. He has no external rules, so he relies entirely on his internal code of conduct. And the core engine driving this unstructured format is the audience itself.
It's open lines.
Right. He heavily leans into what he calls open line nights, complete spontaneity. He openly brags that he has absolutely no idea what's coming, and he prefers it that way.
The example he gives in the interview perfectly encapsulates this. He says, imagine someone calls up and says, "Hey, I found this hole that goes down to the middle of nowhere, or possibly even all the way to Hades."
Which is an amazing prompt.
In a structured, heavily produced show, a call screener drops that line immediately. In Bell's format, you stop everything, you throw out the planned topic, and you just explore the hole.
Which is a beautiful concept. But it's fundamentally different from how we consume media today. It is the difference between doom scrolling and algorithmic feed that is mathematically designed to feed you exactly what you want every 3 seconds,
Right.
versus walking into a massive public library where all the index cards have been burned and you just have to pull books off the shelf to see what's inside. But from a purely practical standpoint, can a nightly show really survive purely on spontaneity? Like, don't listeners eventually fatigue if there isn't some kind of reliable narrative structure?
You might assume that, but the psychology of unstructured media taps into something much deeper. Think about the actual process of scientific discovery. Real science isn't a scripted television show.
Where the breakthrough happens neatly right before the commercial break.
Exactly. Science is wandering around in the dark. It involves testing dead ends, experiencing long, frustrating periods of silence until you suddenly bump into something profound.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense.
By removing the artificial broadcast structure, Bell is simulating the actual rhythm of an investigation. The listener stays engaged because that unpredictability is authentic.
And that concept of wandering the open desert isn't just a convenient metaphor for him. It is his literal origin story. The interview naturally moves from this philosophy of unstructured discovery right into the physical geography of where it all started.
Right, at a local AM station in Las Vegas called KDWN.
Yeah. And it's crucial to remember that he didn't start out as the definitive voice of the paranormal.
Not at all. He was hosting a standard political talk show.
And he talks about reaching a breaking point, just getting completely, utterly fed up with the political discourse. He just said, I'm done. I can't take it anymore.
A total burnout.
Exactly. So in the middle of this pivot, he decides to just start talking about things that actually provoke a sense of wonder in him. He brings up UFOs.
To understand why that pivot was so explosive, you have to look at the cultural vacuum of the time. Political talk radio was becoming increasingly predictable and partisan. Listeners were fatigued.
Yeah, they wanted an out.
When Bell suddenly offered an escape hatch into something infinitely larger, the reaction was instantaneous.
He notes that the phones immediately lit up and his boss literally turned color in the control room.
I can only imagine the panic.
Right. From there, he leans heavily into the unique geography of his broadcast location. He starts getting questions about what exactly is in the water out in Nye County, Nevada, because it is this incredibly dense cluster of bizarre phenomena.
Controversial figures.
Yeah. You have guys like Bob Lazar, who famously claimed to be reverse engineering alien technology. You have John Lear, a pilot deeply embedded in conspiracy theories.
You have the airspace of Area 51.
And Robert Bigelow, an aerospace billionaire, deeply invested in the paranormal. Bell acknowledges it's a bit of a nest of vipers.
But he also muses that there is something environmental at play there. He wonders if there is literally something in the harsh, hot, dry air or the isolated water of the desert that strips away normal, polite societal conventions.
Like the landscape itself changes you.
Yes. The desert acts as a psychological blank slate, motivating people to look up at the sky and openly explore the things that comfortable, city-dwelling people tend to ignore.
That environment breeds a very specific operational philosophy, which he drops in the interview. It's a perfect synthesis of his approach. He says, it's more fun to be weird than right, more fun to wonder than to know.
Which is a brilliant tagline.
It is, though he is careful to clarify that facts still matter,
Okay.
which is why he labels his specific brand as being rightly weird.
Rightly weird is such a great distillation of his style.
But he pairs that philosophy with an incredibly candid admission on camera. He freely states that his show is essentially half hard science and half flat-out entertainment, and he intentionally leaves it entirely up to the audience to decide which is which. Which brings up an interesting dynamic regarding the responsibility of the broadcaster. If the person holding the microphone refuses to label what is empirical fact and what is pure theater, isn't that blurring a dangerous line? Is dropping that responsibility squarely in the listener's lap an act of empowerment? Or is it an abdication of journalistic responsibility?
This raises an important question about how we consume information. In a standard news broadcast, the anchor's job is to chew the food for you. They draw a hard line between fact and fluff.
They tell you what to believe.
Right. But when Bell forces the audience to decipher the reality of the content for themselves, he is demanding critical thinking. You cannot passively absorb a show like that.
You just get lost.
Exactly. You have to actively weigh the evidence presented by a caller against your own internal logic. It's an intensive mental workout disguised as late-night entertainment.
It implies a deep level of respect for the audience. He's treating them like capable adults. And this refusal to separate his wild on-air subject matter from reality brings up another crucial point.
How he manages trust.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
How he manages his audience's trust. The interview shifts from these high-level philosophies into an incredibly grounded discussion about the man behind the mic. He embraces radical transparency about his own life.
He really does. He calls himself an open book and freely admits, I can't keep my mouth shut.
He really just spills everything to the interviewer. One minute he is talking about the fabric of space-time, and the next he is talking about switching from regular cigarettes to electronic ones.
Oh, that part is so funny.
He jokes about the little red LED tip on the device, calling it the smarter Art Bell smoking mist.
It is such a wonderfully mundane detail, but it serves a vital purpose.
And he goes even deeper into his personal life. He talks openly about his very young wife, whom he met in the most perfectly on-brand way imaginable.
Through ham radio.
Through ham radio. The backstory he shares there is just remarkable. After his previous wife, Ramona, passed away, Bell was grieving. His brother-in-law, who was also heavily involved in ham radio, decided to have his fiance's sister start emailing Bell.
And because Bill's brain naturally defaults to the mystical, his first instinct upon receiving these messages is totally supernatural.
Yes, because his late wife was half Filipina, when he starts getting emails from a Filipino woman, he genuinely thought it was a transmission from the afterlife.
He literally thought he was receiving a message from above before he finally pieced together the family connection.
It demonstrates how deeply his cosmic curiosity permeates his daily existence. But it ultimately led to a very real human connection. He marries her, they spend time living in the hot, humid environment of the Philippines, and eventually relocate back to the hot, dry isolation of the Nevada desert.
And suddenly, the guy who hosts late-night discussions about alternate dimensions is managing a totally normal domestic life.
Yeah, he talks about having a 6-year-old daughter who is just getting ready to enter the first grade. He's laughing about the logistical nightmare of his wife and daughter having to wake up early for the school run while he'll be keeping his vampire broadcasting hours and sleeping late into the day.
Amidst all this, he also reveals a flash of genuine vulnerability regarding how he is perceived by the public. He expresses deep frustration with internet commenters who label him a serial retiree.
He clearly hates that phrase.
Ah.
He teases that the audience doesn't actually know the rest of the story regarding why he had to step away from the microphone so many times in the past.
Right, the behind-the-scenes drama.
He admits he is actively struggling with whether to reveal the real reasons, implying that if people actually knew the truth, their entire perspective on his career would change. But looking at all of this,
Yeah.
the electronic cigarettes, the grief, the new marriage, the daughter's school schedule, the frustration with internet trolls, there is a massive contradiction here.
How so?
He spends his entire professional life exploring the greatest hidden mysteries of the universe. Yet his own life is completely unhidden. He broadcasts his mundane daily reality to millions of people. I wonder, does this level of radical transparency open a public figure up to too much vulnerability, or is it actually a calculated tool for audience retention?
It is an absolutely essential mechanism for the specific genre he operates in. When a broadcaster asks you to follow them into the deepest, darkest, most inherently ungrounded concepts imaginable.
Like secret dimensions or alien abduction.
Exactly. They risk entirely alienating the listener. To counter that extreme weirdness, the host must be violently grounded in reality. When a listener hears Bell struggling to quit smoking or complaining about a school schedule, they stop seeing him as a weird, disembodied guru.
They start seeing him as a neighbor.
Right. They trust him to guide them through deep space precisely because they know he is a real guy sitting in a desert town dealing with the exact same mundane human struggles they are.
He makes the infinite feel intimate. By grounding himself, he gives the audience a tether so they don't just float away into the weirdness.
Precisely. It is the ultimate exercise in building trust.
Which perfectly brings us full circle. Looking back at this 2013 time capsule, a few major themes really anchor the discussion. We've traced how fringe concepts, once completely marginalized, systematically migrate into the center of our cultural consciousness.
And we've explored how true discovery often requires shedding the rigid mathematical structures of traditional media in favor of unstructured, spontaneous wandering.
Yes. And we've seen how blending wild, unbounded wonder with radical, mundane human authenticity creates a bond with an audience that traditional formats simply cannot replicate.
It's a masterclass in broadcasting.
It really is. And for you listening to this deep dive right now, there is a massive takeaway that applies directly to how we navigate the modern world. We currently live in an ecosystem overflowing with curated, hyperstructured, algorithmically optimized information.
Everything is quantified.
Everything on your phone is designed to give you a quick, definitive, frictionless answer. But this exploration reminds us that there is immense, profound value in simply allowing yourself the space to wander.
Absolutely.
There is power in going to the library without the index cards, in asking a question without needing the perfectly packaged answer immediately delivered to you.
It is the permission to explore the dark, to sit in the mystery without feeling the compulsion to immediately turn on the floodlights.
Which leads me to this final thought. Bell said it himself. It's more fun to wonder than to know. So I want you to sit with this concept. Imagine what actually happens to human society if we ever do solve all these mysteries.
So that's an interesting thought.
If tomorrow we receive the absolute, undeniable, empirical proof of exactly what UFOs are, or we map out exactly what happens to human consciousness when we die, does the world suddenly become more exciting, or does it become infinitely more boring? Once the ultimate unknown becomes a textbook fact, would those concrete answers ever truly be as captivating as the late-night wonder of standing in the desert, holding a microphone and simply not knowing?